Really appreciate it. Today we're going to talk about content audits and how to put data in the center of your strategy. First, I'm Matt Schickling. I'm the senior content strategist here at From the Future. So we do this a lot. Oh yeah, that's Matt Domeno.
And I'm Matt Domeno. This photo was put up here. It's from my 10th grade year. I was in Punta Cana or something. Those were not my glasses. Matt decided to sneak this in, and we decided to leave it. But I'm Matt Domeno, SEO strategist here from the future.
I want to set the record straight that he begged me to put this in. So when we talk about content audits, we often talk about them as the diagnosis. You're trying to figure out what's up with your site so that you can fix it from a content perspective. And then we usually move to the strategy, which is the cure to that diagnosis. To get there, we're going to talk about a few things today. One being what good content looks like. Why do we even do a content audit? Using the right data, evaluating your options for using that data, and examples of each directive, so examples of each action that comes out of that data. But to start, we're going to get familiar with content and SEO in 2019, something that many of you might already be familiar with because you're at the technical SEO meetup, but we'll talk about it anyway. So a lot of times clients come to us and they'll ask, we had great content, what happened? It could be any number of things. It could be Google's algorithm changing. It's changing all the time. You have to keep pace with it if you want to compete. Market saturation, new products coming to market that compete with you, or your competitors becoming more sophisticated in their content marketing. Your audience, their needs might have evolved, changed, anything like that. You have a bunch of outdated content on your site that you haven't updated in years and years and years. Or you have content that actively competes with your existing content. Maybe you're creating content that you had something similar like 5 years ago, and you're kind of just piling on top of it, and it ends up competing with each other. That's something that we call keyword cannibalization. There's many ways to think about it, but that's one. We also approach content from the perspective of building topical authority. Topical authority is ranking for a broad set of keywords over a niche rather than just one topic at a time. So example that I think we were talking about earlier is if you have a site on a site focused on getting business loans or providing business loans, you want to talk about things like business management, sales figures, things like that, like just to have kind of a relevant overarching theme to your content that keeps it relevant at the topic level and not the individual key level. For example, if you have a site that is dedicated to business loans, it doesn't make sense to have a piece of content about how to tie your shoes. So one way to do this is kind of build your content in topic clusters, centering your smaller content, your blog content around a core topic. In the case of business loans, it might be how to get a business loan, business loans for small businesses, things like that. You center it around that core topic to kind of create a cluster of content that would give you that topical authority. That's like the 5,000 foot view of it. We can get really specific, but today we're here to talk about content audits. And one thing that you might need to be familiar with if you're evaluating content at the keyword level is building a topic model. This is our topic model. So that's a similar concept. It's more about writing for the topic and not necessarily the keyword. So when you think about that example we said, like how to tie your shoes, you would want to give somebody all of the steps that they would need to know how to tie their shoes, and not like a list of shoe tying techniques, because that's not what they're looking for. When you think about it in a broader concept of something like what is bankruptcy, if you want to build a competitive post or page or something on your site that will compete for the term what is bankruptcy, you have to think about the relevant keywords around it, or the relevant terms, not necessarily keywords. One thing that we do for that is we use a tool called ClearScope, and what ClearScope does is it analyzes existing Google results and gives you back like a hierarchy of importance for related terms. So if you think about what is bankruptcy, you have chapter 7, chapter 13, things like bankruptcy case, like law-related terms. So it gives you an indication of what needs to be on that what is bankruptcy page. So if you're writing a page about what is bankruptcy, you better be touching on at least Chapter 7, Chapter 13, Chapter 11, and kind of having a lawyer slant to it. And this kind of summarizes what a lot of the things we just talked about. The key to start thinking in terms of topics you want to own, or the key is to start thinking of topics you want to own and not just the keywords. Apparently Wayne Gretzky said that, and then Michael Scott, and then Lee McKenzie, and somebody from HubSpot. So again, just to reiterate this, when we're thinking about topic clusters, this is kind of what a lot of the internet looked like before people started adapting this approach. You kind of see everything under one umbrella or a few small umbrellas. This is what we should strive for, having focused topics with content built around supporting it. That's kind of that's the approach that we take here, that we recommend to clients. And I just wanted to make sure that we had that in mind before we start the presentation on the content audit. So, why do you do a content audit? At a high level, you want to find out what your content's doing, how it's performing, what's good, what's bad, what content your audience is connecting with, and like how that can all feed into your overall strategy. At a more granular level, you think about which pages, which URLs represent the best opportunities for improvement, where there are gaps in your content, either compared to your competitors or ones you just obviously see when you evaluate your content. What you should keep. Do you have overlapping content? You're going to ask more specific questions as you get into it. So it's just good to think about some of those questions before we have a full conversation on it. Now this is kind of a simplistic view, but it's helpful to just visualize content this way. Usually when you create a post or a page or a URL or something that you're excited about, there's a lot of marketing that goes around that. And it's not all necessarily SEO. It could be you add it to your newsletter. You could post about it on social media. And one thing you'll see when you're evaluating your traffic usually is an initial spike in the performance of that page. It's not necessarily that that's going to be sustainable. It just tends to happen when you create content. And then, of course, after that, you'll see the initial drop when the attention goes off, when it stops trending, when it stops getting all the attention. And the pattern we kind of laid out here, which is not totally accurate for all content, it's just a good way to visualize it again, is you might have a slow growth phase where it's picking up keywords, it's picking up rankings, it's picking up links, a leveling out where it plateaus, and then eventually a drop off. When you get to that drop off point, you need to make a decision about what you're going to do with that content. A lot of times this happens across the site. Like in 2013, they may have invested a lot in content marketing, content production, and then you'll see, in 2019, it's decision time. So just to reiterate, there's 3 reasons you should conduct a content audit. It's if your content's underperforming, if it's performing well, and if you don't know what the hell it's doing. That's pretty much to say that you should conduct a content audit. If you haven't, do it. All right, Matt's going to talk about using the right data to make those decisions.
So when we're thinking about making decisions on the website, minor or major, right, we want to make sure that things are data-backed, data-enforced. We want to be using all of the data, the right data. We don't want to be just pigeonholing ourselves, only using Google Analytics data or Google Search Console data, right? We want to be using all the data that's at our fingertips, and we want to see all of it in one place, at a page level, at a keyword level. How are things performing? And we want it all to be right there in front of us so we can make decisions that way. And so the way we do that here, is it up or down, Matt? Okay. And so the way we do that here is through the website quality audit, right? So search engines like Google, they send traffic to your site, to sites that they deem as high quality, right? Ones that are coded and structured according to their webmaster guidelines, ones that are popular across the website through backlinks and referring domains, and pages and sites that have content that speaks to a specific intent, right? Answers a specific question behind a specific keyword, right? You might have spent a month or a couple weeks creating a blog post using your industry knowledge. It's 5,000 words, and then when it's live, it's just not performing that way, and for the keywords that you wanted it to. So among other things, it's probably because it's not speaking to the intent behind those keywords. And so whenever you're lacking in these areas, Google is crawling your website less, you're getting indexed less, and you're ranking less and less over time. And so why are we talking about the website quality audit? Why isn't it just a collection of sheets that are in a bunch of different places, right? We're collecting all of this data, and it really flows into the rest of your decisions moving forward. So here at FTF, right, a client gets onboarded. The first SEO deliverable that we do is the website quality audit. All of that data is used to filter down and for our decision making moving forward. So the content audit, we want to do keyword research. We want to do a technical SEO audit. When we have all that data together, we can spot major technical issues that are happening. Link building strategy, we can identify those pages that are right on the cusp of linking, or for ranking really well for their respective keywords. We just want to send a couple links and some authority to that page to get it bumped up a couple positions. So I'm talking about aggregating all of this data into one spot in this big massive sheet, but I'm hitting the laser button. But where's the data coming from, and where do you put it? Right. So I'm going to quickly run through 5 data sources that we pull data from, and then go through a couple steps that we do to pull all of this data into one Google Sheet. So we pull data from a site crawler. You should always have a site crawler on hand. Whenever you're doing development pushes, any major or minor changes on the website, you want to be crawling the site and making sure you're not causing any major issues. Right. You don't want to push a major change live and have 500 or half your URLs be 404'd. So you want to constantly be crawling your site anyway. We pull data from Ahrefs, SEMrush, Google Analytics, and Google Search Console. Of course, I'm going to go into detail for each of those in just a second. And we're aggregating all of this into Google Sheets, right? We love Google Sheets at FTF because it's so collaborative, right? A couple of slides ago, I showed how the website quality audit really filters into everything else. The Google Sheets is a really, really good source to be collaborative across teams. And it's really good because it has features like add-ons. I'm going to talk about Supermetrics, which has a Google Sheets add-on. That way you can pull data directly into Google Sheets and not have Excel CSVs everywhere and copying, pasting data. So what do you do first, right? You got to crawl the site. We're crawling the site because we want to have a list of all of the internal URLs on the site. Right? You might have an idea of all of the content on your site. Am I in your way? You might have an idea of all the content on your site, but you might also not. So you want to crawl the site and make sure that you're collecting all of those internal URLs. You want to know how deep in the site architecture these URLs are found. You want to know the HTTP status code. Is it indexable? Is it not? Is the URL being redirected? Where is it being redirected to? All of this data is super useful. When you're exporting from your site crawler, you want to export CSV and import it or paste it into a new tab in a Google Sheet, and that's going to come in handy in just one second. So some site crawler options that we like to use at FTF are Sitebulb, Deepcrawl, and Screaming Frog. We've been really leaning on Sitebulb recently because of the technical SEO hints that it provides. Deepcrawl does something similar, and Screaming Frog is awesome. So next we want to pull in all of the performance data. We want to pull in data from Ahrefs, SEMrush, Google Analytics, and Google Search Console. We do this using either you can manually download all of this data, or we use a couple tools. One of them URL Profiler, and the other one Supermetrics. From Ahrefs, we're going to want to pull backlinks and referring domains. From SEMrush, we're going to want to pull what's the top keyword in SEMrush, what's the position, what's the monthly search volume for that keyword, what's the cost per click we're looking at, and how much is the estimated traffic that URL is getting for that keyword. From Google Analytics, of course, we're going to want page views and sessions. And in Google Search Console, we're going to want keyword and page level data. We're going to want to know how are these pages performing organically with clicks, impressions, CTR, and average position. And then we want to know what the top keyword in Google Search Console is. And we want to know how that keyword is performing for that URL based on clicks and impressions and CTR and average position. You're going to want to export all of that data from URL Profiler. We use URL Profiler mainly for Ahrefs, and then also make a new tab in the sheet and paste it in there. Supermetrics, the add-on in Google Sheets, is really awesome because you can make 4 or 5 different tabs and pull in data directly into those tabs. So this is what URL Profiler, the screen over there is cut off, but URL Profiler is really awesome. You can pull in domain level data or URL level data from Majestic and Moz. Supermetrics is really awesome because you can pull in data from pretty much every single marketing source there really is. Google Analytics, Google Ads, Instagram. They're really, really powerful tools. And last, right, we're going to want to organize all this data into one spot. And really that comes down to those different tabs, organizing it into different tabs so you know where all that data is, and then formulas and formulas and formulas. This formula right here, I'm going to go through in just a second. I'm going to try to explain it. But one tip is, create a template, put all the formulas in there that you're going to need, and then create a copy of it and use that for every single time you're going to do a new website quality audit. That way, once the data is in there, it's just getting pulled into that master tab automatically. And so I look like that when I'm trying to figure out a formula. I don't know about you guys. And so what does the final product look like? So I'm going to open this up and run you guys through it really quick. We used OnDeck as an example here. Matt's going to dive into a couple examples towards the end of the presentation, but this is really what it looks like when it's all together, right? All of these different columns with all of this different data in here. We have page titles, meta descriptions, H1s, where the URL was found. We have a row up here for, where is that data coming from? So it's all organized, all in one spot, and you can really start to make decisions based off of this data. So let me try and walk through that formula. So this formula, oh man. All right, if anyone wants to know how that formula works, I can walk you through it afterward. It's going to be too complicated right now. But all right, I'm going to bounce it back over to Matt, and he's going to talk about using some of this data to evaluate your options.
So we know what data we're working with, right? Like everything that we collected, and we just want, what you want to do next is like learn how to use that data to be able to make decisions about content on your site, about URLs on your site. Oh, wrong way. So when you're organizing that content, it's usually going to fall into 3 categories. And I made this really, really basic. Content that is beneficial to your business, content that does absolutely nothing for your business, and content that actively harms your business. And that feeds into 5 directives. These are basically the actionable decisions that we make with the content. So like if you're looking at a URL, you have to decide what to do with it. We kind of placed it into these 5 buckets. It's leave it as it is. The content's doing great. Keep it just the way it is. Optimize, which means like the content's kind of on the cusp, the way he talked about with link building. If it's on the cusp of ranking for some valuable keywords highly, then you might need to make some on-page improvements just to give it a little nudge, get it in the right direction. I want to reiterate too, these are marginal changes, not wholesale changes, so you're not rewriting the content. But with the next directive, you are rewriting the content. I usually refer to the rewrite directive as like an A for effort idea. It's a great idea, it's just executed really, really poorly. So you're gonna basically scrap it, keep the idea, and start over. And write or create content in the optimal way for SEO. Again, the combine directive, this goes back to if 2 post pages, URLs, are competing for the same keyword, it often makes sense to combine them to avoid keyword cannibalization. We do not want 2 pages on your site competing for the same thing. And deprecate and redirect, this is basically deleting a site, or deleting a page off your site. It's usually reserved for posts that get no traffic, post pages, URLs that just aren't really worth having on your site because they don't bring any value. I keep going the wrong way, I'm sorry. Okay, and Paige, our designer, kind of put this into a cool graphic for us. So you have content that actively harms your business. You're either going to get rid of it, deprecate, and redirect to the most relevant existing URL, or combine it if it's actively competing with another post. If it brings no value to the business, the door is kind of wide open. The one thing you don't want to do is leave it as it is, because if it brings no value, why would you leave it as it is? And then if it's beneficial to your business, you would either leave it as it is, optimize it, rewrite it, because you want to either keep it as it is or improve the performance. So now you kind of know like what the decisions are that we can make out of this. I kind of want to give you some shorthand tips for using data to make those decisions. So all of that stuff that Matt collected is just like it seems overwhelming, but there's some shorthand that you can do to kind of give yourself a shortcut. One thing is looking at the traffic and setting an overall kind of benchmark for valuable traffic. When we collect that data for clients, we usually do it over 90 days, 3 months. And if something gets less than 20 organic sessions over the last 90 days, it's usually not worth keeping around. And that obviously is case by case dependent. If it's like a page that can be optimized, you might think about keeping it around. But that's just kind of the benchmark I set to be able to, like, at a high level, look at something and start making decisions like, where am I at, basically. Another thing to look at is keyword rankings and impressions too. If something has like very, very high impressions and low clicks, you might think about optimizing the metadata just to kind of make it more engaging, make it more clickable in Google. And I would also look at the average keyword position for some URLs. So if they're in like the 5 to 20 range for a valuable URL, one you want to rank for, or valuable keyword, one you want to rank for your site, consider an optimization or a rewrite for those posts or pages. And then backlinks and referring domains. If a URL has backlinks or referring domains, it does have SEO value even if it doesn't have traffic. So you might want to think about how you can use that to either like support another post or page with a redirect, or just optimize the content on that page in order to get it ranking for a relevant keyword. This is something I kind of wanted to talk about because it's like a sticking point with a lot of websites. I want to give some caveats before you go and delete your entire site because it doesn't get any traffic. So that's another word for like deprecating, redirecting is basically just pruning content from your site, like getting rid of the content that is harming or not helping the site. One thing I want to note is it's not going to create a windfall of traffic if you just start plucking bad poster pages off your site. It just doesn't happen that way. It's more about clearing up and creating kind of a more streamlined, sustainable platform to build from. And bigger sites tend to benefit more than smaller sites. So on like a SaaS blog, or like a software blog, or like a smaller like B2B software site, you shouldn't just be picking off content left and right. There's probably some value for users or consumers. You don't want to be just deleting half your blog if it's only 20 posts. You got to give yourself a chance. So like taking a look at the content, trying to find real value, potentially repurposing it into a newsletter, a downloadable asset, something like that. You don't just want to completely obliterate it from your site. Bigger sites, you think about like Best Buy, e-commerce, something like that, something huge that has like thousands and thousands of URLs. Deleting one is not going to hurt it as much as it would, deleting it like off a smaller site. It's just an easier decision, is what I'm trying to say, if it's a bigger site. You also want to evaluate the page itself. So while it might not be getting traffic, you should look at things like, are there any other internal links? Like, can a user find that page or post on the rest of the site? Is the content good, or is it terrible and thin and not helpful? Is it accessible? Is it like, can you navigate to it from anywhere on the site, like maybe the main nav or the blog homepage, or really anywhere? Like a lot of times you'll see content that has no traffic and it's good content, and you realize that it's just not accessible. So like adding some internal links or some navigation that would be able to, make it more crawlable, make it more relevant to the site would help it. So what we did here, and it's kind of cut off, is we created like a content pruning decision tree. I'm going to try to do this, but you'll have access to the slide deck after, so you can go through this if you want. But basically what we did here is like ask questions that would lead you to make a decision. The first being, is the content that we're looking at driving SEO value or traffic through other marketing channels being, your newsletter, social media, paid, anything like that that'll bring value. And if the answer is yes, you ask yourself, does it actively compete with an existing page's keywords or rankings? If the answer is no, you would ask yourself, is the content thin, outdated, or poorly formatted? If the answer is no still, you're going to gauge performance and either leave as is or optimize to improve performance. So like it's kind of like that. I don't want to go through every single decision you could possibly make, but I want, if you're interested in this, if you want to do a content audit on your site, I suggest you get into the slide deck after this presentation and just take a look at how the decision tree works for deciding what to do with content. This is another sticking point with a lot of clients and businesses. When you're thinking about pruning content or getting rid of content on your site, you often think about the investment that you made on it in the first place. I would highly recommend not getting emotionally attached to your past content. Things you made in 2012 are just not built for the world that we live in 2019. In some cases, maybe that's true. Age is obviously a factor in ranking, but you might have to rewrite it. You might have to optimize it. You got to do something to it. You cannot just sit on a content from 2012 and think that it's going to just continue to bring you success, throughout, through 2019 and beyond. You don't want to be the baby throwing money out of the window. So all that being said, we're going to go into some examples of each directive using OnDeck, the data that Matt laid out. And we're going to go at a pretty high level. And we want to leave time for questions, so if you have any after, we can talk more about each of these directives or anything else that we brought up tonight. So for OnDeck, there was actually only one URL on the entire blog. We only crawled the blog that we recommended leaving as is. And it's an article about small business articles from 2017. And I think it's probably just because it's such a specific keyword. But according to Ahrefs, it does have 800 searches per month. So 800 people are searching apparently about business articles in 2017. I find that hard to believe, but who knows? So it gains, according to Ahrefs again, roughly 400 organic visits per month. And one thing that we would think about doing this, the caveats, is that it ranks 4th right now for small business articles, which may or may not be a valuable term. I'd leave that up to OnDeck. But we just recommend it leaving it as it is. It's not worth, to me, it's not worth investing the time and energy to gain that ranking if you already have it. Basically for 2017, the one thing that you could do is update the post to be relevant to 2019, but it's basically redoing the whole thing. So it's already gaining 400 organic visits per month. We're just gonna let sleeping dogs lie with that one. For the optimize example, they had a post on 3 financial trends to watch in 2018. It ranks 4th for financial trends, 4th for finance trends, 9th for financial trends, and in the top 15 for a bunch of related terms. It's poorly formatted. It's obvious when you look at it. It's it's just like a big wall of text, and it's also written for 2018. So one thing that we recommend here is probably just updating it for 2019, streamlining the format of the post, and going from there. Potentially a caveat down there, rewriting it would likely be more effective than just improving it around the margins. But again, if we're allocating resources responsibly, is that really the right decision? There's higher priorities. We don't want to have to in a perfect world, we'd be able to rewrite every single page post or on our site, but we got to kind of create a hierarchy of what's important. But because we are on the optimized example, I did want to go through some things that you can do to optimize posts or blog posts specifically, but also some pages, landing pages and things like that. When you're going, this is kind of the process we follow for optimizing blog posts and landing pages. If I would look at first if the page title is optimized for the keyword. Second, you would either rewrite the H1 or just make it more engaging in a way that also targets the top keyword for the page. Rewrite the meta description to make it more engaging. Use keywords and related terms, that's semantic terms we talked about earlier, in article subheaders, so the H2s, the H3s, the H4s. Evaluate the URL slug for proper optimization. Ensure that images are optimized. And then again, like we talked about, collecting data on semantic keywords. If it's a really competitive post, if we're targeting a really competitive keyword, that's a good idea because it kind of gives you the data you need to make a topic model to be able to to be able to get every relevant term on the page and addressed. We're just not typically going to do that in optimization. We're really just kind of going to tweak some things, maybe make some specific changes or recommendations to body text. So improving the intro so that it immediately focuses on the topic at hand. Things like that. Like again, these are marginal changes, not wholesale changes. If we're going to make wholesale changes, we're talking about a rewrite. So this one, it's on 3 effective sales tactics. It ranks in the teens for several relevant terms around sales tactics. I don't know about you, but when I think about sales tactics, I think there's more than 3. Like 3 effective sales tactics in any business. This post is just, if we look at it, it's just like really thin. We don't want to, it's just like not worth optimizing because it won't improve performance. It needs a complete rewrite. It needs to be rebuilt from the top down. So again, like I noted here, the existing content is very thin. For the scope of the topic, it's poorly organized. And then like some caveats I would ask myself if I was looking at this page and thinking about either rewriting it or getting rid of it are, does this page's existing traffic convert? Like are the users on this page, are they going deeper into the website? Are they opting into a newsletter? Are they doing anything to interact with the site outside of this content? And is it relevant to the OnDeck audience? OnDeck being the example here. So like, when you're thinking about getting a business loan, 3 effective sales tactics like might be a relevant topic, but it's very, very, very top of the funnel. It might not be like worth the time and attention to rewrite completely. So you'd have to make a decision there based on your business. Combined example, we basically have 2 posts that are saying the same thing. They're find the right business loan, small business loan requirements. So they both basically list the requirements the requirements that businesses need to have, the qualifications to get a small business loan. They have the same intent. They're educating users about the same exact thing. These 2 actually don't compete for the same keywords just because the one ranks for like no keywords, but they are different enough content that it does make sense to combine them. If you're looking at the presentation after and you click into it, the one is more of a chart, kind of just listing the requirements of what you need to have to get a small business loan at every level. The other one is more of a paragraph text style. So there is an opportunity to combine them and ultimately create a better blog post that covers that business loan requirements keyword a little more comprehensively. Oh, sorry. And then OnDeck also has a post about bookkeeping tips for 2015. I could not think of something less relevant for 2019. The reasons we're talking about deprecating this one, getting rid of it off the site, is that it gains no traffic. It's very outdated. It has thin content. You could think about updating and repurposing this post as 2019, but honestly, it's better to just create a new one. This one is not ranking for anything. It hasn't had traffic in a very long time, and it's super thin and not relevant to what would rank for bookkeeping tips or whatever term it was originally targeting. So we covered a lot. I know a lot of you kind of look like this guy in the audience right now. But I wanted to take a breath, relax, reiterate, think about all the things we covered so that we can get some good questions flowing. So we went through what good content looks like, writing for topical authority, topic modeling, why do a content audit. Matt went through using the right data, collecting that data, evaluating your options, deciding what to do with that data. And then we went through a few examples from OnDeck quickly. So that brings us to the end of what we wanted to talk about. And we were wondering if you guys had any questions that you wanted to ask me or Matt or anybody from our team.
You mentioned quite a bit about dates, articles on date. I don't know about you, but I'm noticing more and more articles don't have a date that's clearly indicated, so I'll right-click and look at sources to see is it relevant or not. What do you think about that?
I think that a lot of when you write a post or a page or anything for a date, a lot of companies, more sophisticated ones that actually pay attention to their content marketing all the time, will update it every year. So OnDeck, I didn't dig this deep, but I imagine they'll have one for 2017, 2016, 2018, because they just haven't, they haven't done it every year, or they do it, or they haven't updated the same URL every year. So like a good idea in that case is if you have like a bunch of bookkeeping articles for every year, maybe combining them into your 2020 resource or 2019 resource or whatever is relevant at the time right now. It doesn't hurt to have the date in it. It just kind of lets people know that it's current. If it has an old date in it, it's not something that I'm personally going to click. I don't, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
In the case of full rewrite,
Yeah.
do you keep the same URL or do you set up a different page post, whatever? And
It depends. It's helpful to keep the same URL if it's like doable. But if you have just like a completely irrelevant one, it might make sense to just redirect to a new one. It's really a case-by-case basis. So it just depends like how relevant it is, like where it's at in your site architecture. It's really hard to say just like, thinking about that example in the abstract, because we've recommended like all kinds of different stuff along that route.
Generally, I'd say we probably try to avoid changing
Yeah.
URLs as much as possible, because the URL is rarely ever as important as the click depth off of the route.
Middle.
When you're doing content audits, the site has like hundreds of articles.
Sorry, please speak up.
When you're doing content audits and the site has hundreds of articles, how specific do you go with the recommendations? For example, do you just say rewrite and optimize, or do you go more specific on what they should optimize for that specific article?
So what we do typically, like when we're going through client plans specifically, is we will give those directives at a very broad level, because it's, if you're looking at thousands, hundreds, potentially thousands of URLs, it's really hard to look at everyone and be like, you need to do exactly this. So a lot of times we'll do that, we'll deliver that at a high level, like, hey, we have, we want to rewrite 200 URLs. We got to put that on a schedule. We got to get that in production. So we'll do it that way, and we'll like break it out in the work afterward, so that we can attack everything at once, more than trying to just, if you did a content audit and you tried to give recommendations within it, it would be like a 60-hour deliverable.
So then you decide on which page you're going to rewrite, and you go analyze each one and...
Yeah, we'll give specific recommendations for each one, but we'll more schedule it out. So we'll be like, hey, we're going to do 10 this month, 10 the next month, and we'll kind of rank them in order, like in a hierarchy of like what's the best opportunity, so that we're attacking the best opportunities first. You.
In terms of the URL structure you recommend for topic pages and pillar pages, how important do you think it is for the topic pages of the post to live as in subfolders of the pillar page, the child page? Because with like WordPress, obviously if you're set as blog posts, you have less flexibility on where this can live.
I'm going to give my short answer, and then I'm going to let Nick give the long answer. It depends.
We're big fans of trying to retain like an ideal parent-child infrastructure, like architecture across URLs, but it's not nearly as important, I think, as a lot of people give it weight to. We have plenty of cases where we work with really big content sites and like really big, that have really big publication schedules, and really important, pillar pages where like that a hub page, so like a topic cluster page or a hub page might rank for 10,000 keywords. And the reason that the hub page ranks so much is because the contextual relevancy that's been able to be built around that, where the cluster content might be comprised of 50 different posts. They may all be in the root directory, or they might all be in, the third directory level deep. And all, like, what matters more than anything else that we're continuously seeing is the way the internal link architecture is set up to tell Googlebot to tell the crawlers, and to mirror that behavior through the click patterns that Google's able to see as well. That are happening both on the site and on search. Because if you don't think Google's using click data from Chrome, like, you're crazy. But yeah, internal link architecture I think matters more than URLs at this point.
You mentioned you guys use ClearScope.
Yeah.
So how obsessive do you get with your score? Right.
What's that? How obsessive?
Yeah.
We do not get super obsessive, because I think like kind of the way it's scored is that if you just have all of the terms in there, you get like an A++ or whatever. We more use it to like structure, structure the heading and subheading structure, like kind of just decide what topics we're going to put under the big topic. That's more what we use it for. I have in the past gotten pretty obsessed with the score, And I've seen success with it, so I can't say that it's like, definitively not right.
Do you see a direct correlation between your score and ranking?
I can't say.
It's a two-word answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It depends.
It depends.
There have been instances where Matt and his team have gotten posts to like the A++, and we've seen immediate traffic gains, but there's been the exact scenarios where we've gotten posts to an A++ and nothing changes. I mean, at the end of the day, ClearScope is a fantastic barometer. It's a super efficient shortcut for building a topic model, but also at the end of the day, it's a glory. I don't want to discount any of the work Bernard and his team are doing, but it's a glorified TF-IDF tool that they're layering in some machine learning from Watson's NLP algorithm, which is dope, but it's still term frequency times inverse document frequency when it comes down to it.
Yeah, it looks pretty.
It does.
Sure.
Can you say more about what OnDeck is?
Oh, it was just our example. Like OnDeck is like a loan financer.
Publicly traded company for business loans.
Yeah. It was just our example. That's it.
We work with a bunch of their competitors, so it was fun to rip them apart a little bit.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay.
All right, guys. Hey, thank you both.
Thank you.